If you're looking for the most capable mid-size sedan for off-road or snow use, then look no further than this Nissan Altima with tracks. But all kidding aside, the Altima for 2019 is joining a very select group of mid-size sedans in America that is now available with all-wheel drive. If you want a mainstream all-wheel drive family sedan, you have three options in America. The Subaru Legacy, which starts a few $1,000s less than this model right here, which starts right around $25,000, and then the Ford Fusion, which may not be long for this world, that starts a few $1,000s more than this if you want the all-wheel drive option. Now, Ford has been pretty cagey about the Fusion's future, but we do expect it to be canceled along with most of their sedan lineup here very shortly. Hopefully you'll pardon the hood over my head. It is pretty cold out here in Canada. We're about 100 miles north of Montreal, and at the moment it's negative 26 degrees Fahrenheit, so it is definitely chilly out here. We have LED headlamps up front in the model that we're looking at here with these distinctive chevrons that we've seen in other Nissan models lately. We have fog lamps down below, and I think a definitely attractive and distinctive look up front. To my eye, I find this a little bit more attractive than what we see going on in the current generation Toyota Camry or the Ford Fusion, but I do think the Mazda 6 is the most beautiful entry in this segment. But you can't get all-wheel drive in that Mazda. Behind this large Nissan logo, we find a radar sensor because this does have all of Nissan's latest active safety systems on it. Now, they're not standard on all trims, but they are available. And that includes radar adaptive cruise control, pre-collision braking, lane keeping assistance, blind spot monitoring, etc. Everything that you're seeing over there on the side of your screen. At around 191 inches long, the Altima is not the longest in this segment. It is a little bit shorter than the Honda Accord, for example, but this is a little bit longer than the Subaru Legacy, and that gives us a little bit more practical interior room. We don't know all the details about the upcoming 2020 Legacy, but we do know that overall legroom is not likely to improve, we've been told. Back here in the Altima, we actually see a little bit less legroom than the last generation model, most likely because this is now available with all-wheel drive, and that has caused them to repackage a few things in the rear. As is the style with most sedans these days, Nissan decided to drop the roofline a little bit towards the rear, but not quite as much as we see in some of the competition. They've also borrowed a few styling cues out of their crossover lineup, this chrome bar that kicks up at the rear, and this black bit right there that separates the roofline from the body line. Out back, we have combination tail lamps, so there are some LED elements and then there's some incandescent elements like the turn signals and the backup lamps. These also mirror that same chevron theme going on up front. There's a little bit of a kick-up spoiler right here on the trunk lid, dual exhaust tips down below, and you can see we have platinum badging on that side because we have been spending most of our time today in the top-end version. In addition to that, under the cargo area load floor, we find a spare tire and enough room to put a full-size spare tire if you wanted to buy one aftermarket. The one that comes with the car is a donut. Under the hood, we have two engines, but only one of them is available with all-wheel drive, and that's the base engine, which is a 2.5-liter four-cylinder naturally aspirated engine. It produces 188 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque. That is a little bit down on power compared to some of the competition's base engines. The only transmission on offer is a continuously variable transmission, whether you get this 2.5 or the optional 2-liter turbo. The best fuel economy will be in the naturally aspirated model with front-wheel drive. That'll get you 32 miles per gallon combined, but you don't drop too far if you add all-wheel drive, just down to 30 miles per gallon. At the moment, that makes the Nissan the most efficient all-wheel drive entry in this segment. The Subaru Legacy for now is 1 mile per gallon less efficient than this, and the Ford Fusion is several mpg lower because in order to get all-wheel drive, you have to get their 2-liter turbo. A lot of folks have been asking me about the Nissan all-wheel drive system and does it send power to the rear immediately upon launch. Let's give that a try, first with traction control on. The car is in drive. I'm just going to lift my foot off the brake pedal, apply it to the accelerator pedal, and we'll see what happens. And yep, it sends power to the rear pretty much immediately. Now let's try that with the traction control off and see what the difference is. So here we go again. And you can see that we don't really get too much slip there. And there we have it. Like most all-wheel drive cars sold in America right now, this is a predictive and a reactive all-wheel drive system. So not only will it react to front wheel slip and send power to the rear, it will also predict times where it may need to send power to the rear, like it knows that it's cold out here right now, and it knows that the vehicle is stopped and that you're going to accelerate, so it's going to lock up that center coupling and send power to the rear right away. It's not actually going to wait for wheel slip, so the traction control system wasn't really required for that. It's also pretty obvious that we don't have a lot of low-end power and a really aggressive gear ratio in that CVT, so it wasn't really spinning its wheels. Now, these are dedicated winter tires. These are Michelin Alpine tires, so these are definitely grippy winter tires, and that's part of the reason why no wheel slip was really happening there. When it comes to front seat comfort, I'm going to give this 9 out of 10 points. These are some of the best seats in the industry, but it is worth noting that the passenger seat, even in this top-end trim, doesn't have the same range of motion as the driver's seat, so it doesn't get the two-way adjustable lumbar, and you can't adjust the seat bottom cushion for tilt. During my 3 days up here in Canada, I have spent about 8 hours overall in the passenger seat. The passenger seat is definitely a little less comfortable than the driver's seat. So if you want that added passenger comfort, you may need to look at some other options out there. We have a tilt telescopic steering column with a decent range of motion, and the driver's seat has a 2-position memory over there on the door. When it comes to the rear seats, I'm going to give these 8 out of 10 points. As I said, overall legroom did shrink a little bit in this generation, but as you can see, I still have a generous 4 inches or so sitting right there behind myself. Headroom is just about as limited as it is in any of the mid-size sedans in America at the moment. If I lean my head back to touch that headrest, my head is definitely pressing into the ceiling, but we actually get just a hint more headroom back here than some of the other options. If I scoot over to the middle seat, that's definitely noticeable. I definitely have to crane my head to one side in order to try and squeeze there. Moving all the way over to the right, where this front seat is all the way back in its tracks, I still have about 2 inches of legroom left. Rear passengers get a padded armrest with 2 cup holders right there, and then we have 2 USB charge ports in the center console here. One's a USB-C and one is the more traditional USB-A port. Cargo capacity is pretty generous in the Altima. We have 15.8 cubic feet of storage right behind this trunk. Not only is this cargo area among the largest in this segment, but it is also very practically shaped. It's very square, and that allows us to put a lot of larger luggage in here. Depending on the exact size of your 22-inch roller bag, you can put some bags in that position and still close the trunk lid, and that's not something that you can do in every mid-size sedan in America. As we look around this interior briefly, remember that we are in the top-end platinum trim, so things are going to look a little bit less premium in the lower-end trims. We have a pretty standard-sized moonroof right there over the driver and front passengers' heads, 2-way adjustable headrests, and height-adjustable shoulder belts for the front seats. The model that we're in has leather upholstery. The center sections are perforated, but these seats are not ventilated. They're just heated. Moving over to the front door panels, we do find a great deal of soft touch materials in this generation, but still a few hard plastics down there at the bottom for added durability, right around that bottle holder at the bottom and the speaker grille. The overall style of this interior is definitely a departure from the last generation Altima. We have a band of imitation wood trim running across the dashboard right there, and then the infotainment screen perched on top of the dash, very similar to what we see in a number of modern Kia and Hyundai models, and of course the Honda Accord as well. We have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration on this screen, and I have to say that when you take a look around here, the overall build quality in this production model is definitely better than the last model that I drove. A lot of folks were questioning the build quality in the last Altima that I was in. As I said in that video, that was a pre-production model. This is actually a production model, and all the ones that we've been in this week have been production vehicles. And you can see that the overall fit quality is definitely better. There are no funky gaps going around these seams right here by the air vents, the infotainment system, etc. We have dual zone automatic climate control below that. We're in a Canadian model, so it is in Celsius. Heated seats, heated steering wheel right there. The 2 USB inputs for the infotainment system. Again, the new USB-C connector and the standard USB connector. 12-volt power outlet. A pretty typical console shifter here. Drive and low, no manual modes here in this vehicle. We then have 2 medium-sized cup holders right there, an electric parking brake, and auto brake hold. The instrument cluster is very similar to other Nissan models. We have white numbers on black faces and the larger color LCD in this particular trim. Moving out from there, we have one of Nissan's latest flat bottom steering wheel designs. It's actually quite a comfortable steering wheel. We have sport grips up top, and it is leather wrapped. Again, no paddles on the back. You'll find the infotainment controls over here on the left, along with this multifunction button array that controls that multifunction LCD. And then on the right side, we have the controls for the radar adaptive cruise control system. This button turns on and off some of the active safety systems. And then we have a voice command button and a dedicated phone button. Let's talk about preliminary numbers first. In our testing, we managed to get 7.4 seconds 0 to 60 in this model in Montreal in drier conditions than this, where traction wasn't an issue. I expect that's going to be about the same when we get this home. That's notably slower, of course, than the last 2-liter turbo model that we tested, which ran from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. But on the other hand, that's actually faster than the last Subaru Legacy with their base engine that we tested. Stopping distances are likely going to be about the same as the last model we tested as well, about 119, 120 feet, 60 miles an hour to 0, because this is about the same curb weight as the last model that we drove. With that out of the way, let's talk about the all-wheel drive system. Again, if I floor this, we get instant traction here. We definitely have a lot of power being sent to the rear right away. And then there's that reactive function where the system is going to be managing our traction via the traction control system in the vehicle, braking individual wheels as they spin. This definitely has a solid, stable feel to it out on the road. As I frequently tell folks, remember that tires are a huge part of the equation, and sometimes the biggest part of the equation, to be perfectly frank. The tires on this particular car are Michelin winter tires. They're actually some of the nicest ones in the industry. And then we've had Blizzaks on some of the other vehicles that we've been allowed to drive out here in Canada. Winter tires are always going to help you stop faster. If we need panic stop, you'll notice that we still get some wheel lockup, and it's going to take a while to stop, but you're going to stop an awful lot shorter than if you were driving on this same surface in something like an all-season tire. A lot of folks don't realize that when temperatures drop below about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, a winter tire like this is always going to handle better and stop shorter than a car with all-season tires. If you want the optimum traction for acceleration, then you're going to want a combination of good winter tires and the all-wheel drive system that we have in this particular model. But if you're simply looking for improved traction or improved peace of mind, I would say definitely get winter tires on either the front-wheel drive or the all-wheel drive version of the Altima if you live in an area that regularly gets down below freezing. Remember that a front-wheel drive Altima with good winter tires on it will out-handle and out-brake an all-wheel drive Altima with all seasons on it every time if the temperatures are as low as they are right out here, whether we're talking about an icy road surface or a snowy road surface or one that is completely dry. Ride quality is generally speaking good in the Altima, but we are driving the very top end trim out here, which has the biggest wheel and tire package, so the skinniest rubber available. And as any of you that live out in snowy areas know, when they're out here plowing the road, you can end up with some chug holes in the road or some washboard snow and ice, etc. And we definitely are feeling those road imperfections into the cabin because of the tire and wheel choice on this model. That's going to become less apparent if you work your way down the trim line because we get a little bit more rubber on the tires in the base models. In terms of overall suspension dynamics, the Altima does give up a little bit to the Camry and the Accord in terms of overall polish, but the difference is smaller than it has been in the past, especially when compared against the Honda Accord. The rear end of this Altima doesn't get upset over broken pavement or this washboard pavement in corners. It's actually pretty easy to steer this even in slippery situations. But overall, we don't have quite the same level of polish that we do see in the current generation Accord. But the difference, again, is very, very small. And of course, the key difference for this model is the Accord doesn't come with all-wheel drive. If you want to know about cabin noise or our average fuel economy, you'll have to check back when we get this at home for a complete week, because obviously we aren't testing this in the same conditions that we test other cars. So how much will an all-wheel drive Altima set you back? Well, all-wheel drive is a $1,350 option on every trim. That means you can get a base model with all-wheel drive. That will set you back $25,250. The Platinum model that we've been driving today is the top-end trim. That was $33,280. That's one of the most expensive forms of Altima that you can get. In terms of comparisons, that puts the base model of the Altima about $1,500 below the Ford Fusion with all-wheel drive. But the Fusion gets more power. It gets that 2-liter turbocharged engine when paired with all-wheel drive. This one, again, still has the base 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine. So the Fusion is going to be a little bit quicker than this, but this is going to be notably more fuel efficient at 30 miles per gallon or more in real-world driving. The Altima has always impressed in terms of its overall fuel economy, and that doesn't really change when you've selected the all-wheel drive option. The Altima uses the same predictive all-wheel drive system that we see in the Rogue, the Pathfinder, etc. And that means that this vehicle can disconnect the rear wheels and send power just up front in order to help save fuel when you're out on the open highway. But it will then reconnect the rear axle when you're taking off from a start to help give you better traction in snowy weather like we're on right here, or whenever the front wheels start to slip. Now, the other big entry in this segment is, of course, the Subaru Legacy, which starts less than this at $22,545. Now, we don't know what the new 2020 Legacy model will cost, but we do know that it's likely going to be a little bit smaller on the inside than this model, and the trunk is not quite as spacious. When it comes to absolute value, there's no question the Subaru Legacy is definitely the bargain entry in this segment, and all-wheel drive is standard over there on the side of the Subaru. But the Altima over here does get better fuel economy than that Subaru model, and I actually like the way that this particular model drives versus the Subaru. We have a little bit less weight up front. The vehicle overall feels a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun than the current generation model, but we don't know what 2020 is going to bring for Subaru because it's going to be an entirely new model of Legacy, and we're going to get a turbocharged engine option up front with all-wheel drive. So if you want extra power and all-wheel drive, you will be able to find that in this segment. But if you're simply looking for one of the best all-wheel drive sedans that has a confident feel out on the road, is well priced, and gives you excellent fuel economy, the Altima is going to be a solid choice. And it's also one of the only choices because the Camry and the Accord, according to Toyota and Honda, just won't have all-wheel drive anytime in the future. As usual, we'll have complete driving metrics once we get our hands on this back at home for a complete week, so we could do our usual test stopping acceleration when we're not out here in the snow in negative 20-degree weather. Until that point, be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen and let me know what you would pick if you're shopping in this segment. Would you get this, or would you get the Subaru Legacy, or would you wait for the 2020 Legacy? I'd be really interested to know what you think. Also, let me know what you think about the overall interior design. I really like the way this interior looks more than the current generation Legacy, but the upcoming 2020 model will have that huge screen in the center of the dashboard, which is really, really interesting. Let me know what you think about that down below. Find us over at facebook.com/AlexNautos, and if you want to support this channel, click up there to the top of your screen. If enough of you support this channel, then I might be able to buy appropriate footwear for the snow.